Things started. We're off. All right, so here we go. I'm going to select a colour. I'm not going to draw around my Roadrunner in black. We're not going to use black at all because what we're going to do later will be distorted by the black, and we don't want to try and do that. We want to use as much colour as possible. So from my water-soluble oil pastels, I'm going to choose a colour, and I'm going to go with purple. All right, I'm going to use quite a bit of blue, quite a bit of orange, and purple will go quite nicely with those. So I'm going to start by working out where my Roadrunner will go. When I look at the whole piece of paper, we've lost Roadrunner off the screen, and it's frozen. There we go. All right. So Roadrunner, I want him to fit completely on my piece of paper, right from one side to the other. What I don't want to do is have a little Roadrunner in the middle of the page like this, because that isn't any good. Okay? There'll be a big noise when that happens if you do it. Okay? We want a really good drawing that's going to take up the whole of our piece of A3 paper. And for some of us, that's going to be quite difficult because we're used to working small and precise. And the whole point of this is to try and break you out of that box. You're going to use your whole arm when you draw. Jack?
Can you draw it this way?
If you've got a character that's better that way around, then do it that way around. The reason, you can see why I'm doing this way, can't you? All right, so what I want to try and do is work out on my piece of paper how big his head is in comparison to the rest of his body. All right, so I'm working out his head and most of his sort of head feather here. If I put my finger at one end of his beak and the other finger on the feather and then do 1 and 2, he's in thirds. So I reckon if I was to make his head yo big and his body there and then his tail would come to about that part of his paper. So if you can see here and here, I've got 3 equal sections. Head here, body, tail feathers. Okay, and you need to be thinking that way when you plan out your drawing. So I'm going to use a sort of rough, I reckon his head fits in about here, something like that. I'm pressing lightly to begin with. I don't want to press heavily, too dark. Then his body is kind of a straight line. He's kind of a bit like an arrow, because that's how he operates. And then his tail comes up at the back, and kind of that's the rough shape. And then his back leg, or his legs rather, because he only has 2 legs, the rest are wings. And then he's got his circle thing going on here, and he's got a beak that flips up at the front. So I'm roughing it in. He's got an eye that goes at the front of his head like that, and then the head plume kind of fits in there. Okay, so you can see I've done everything so far light. Haven't made any dark lines yet. The eventual piece of work that we're going to do here is all about colour. The only way we're going to get colour onto our page is if we're brave with our oil pastels, because the more of this you put onto the paper, the more colour you're going to get at the end. Okay? Got to bear that in mind. So you've got to be brave. At some point you've got to press a bit harder, but you need to know where to press harder. That's why we do this light drawing first. Okay, so I'm going to expect all of you to do that. Right, so I'm going to start off with just blocking in the eye a bit. I'm going to draw a little bit firmer, and he's got a kind of cheeky smile coming down from there, and that comes round and up onto his beak. And then he's got a line that comes up, joins up there, and then he's got, now this bottom of his beak swings round and it joins up with his smiley face on his cheek there. I'm trying to make sure I get plenty of colour down. As I said, we're pressing. His head is actually closed off, I think. There's a line that goes all the way around that. And then I can look carefully at his plume, and he has a kind of flick up at the top, and that comes down. There's several feathers that happen in there. That kind of looks about right. And then he's got a little eyeball, cheeky little eyeball there, staring out the front so he knows where he's going. And then he's got a very, very thin body. Very, very thin body. Like I said, it's a bit like an arrow because he runs so fast. And I can then give him a bit of a tummy, which goes up to his tail there. And the body continues fairly straight. And it goes. Can you see this? I've gone off the paper, haven't I? I'll move this over. And then up and back for the tail. In fact, I've made that angle a bit wrong, but I don't mind correcting. Very happy with corrections. And I really like seeing corrections on your work because it shows that you're working things out. It shows that you're adjusting in your mind and you're not too proud of what you've done already to be able to say, actually, I can make that better. Don't worry about making corrections. We like it. You've got lots of lines that I've put here on the paper that are always going to be there. And I don't mind because it kind of shows the workings of it. Shows how I've done it. I'm going to make this have a sort of general sort of swoosh thing going on. Right, I'm going to pop some blue on. He's a bit darker on his head, so I'm going to really work into that area. Get some blue going into there. His head plume, which I think I've made a little bit thick there. Comes up like that, and I can work on the, get plenty of the blue onto the paper. He's got a wing. Oh, I've forgotten his wing. How does that look? It's kind of like an oval shape, which pops in there like that, and it's got a little feathery mark. I'm not too worried about the detail at this point. I'm going to put a bit of a darker blue under there so it merges. I might find that this blue isn't quite dark enough, so I think what I might do is take a slightly darker blue, just in certain parts, and just work on top with a bit more heavy blue. Make some darker blue marks like that. I'm trying to... Roadrunner is known for his kind of... He's an action figure, isn't he? He's quite dynamic, and the way that he's drawn is fairly clinical. If we look at a printout of him, it's kind of clinical in the way that he looks. But actually, I find that a bit boring. As a piece of art, having perfect lines almost takes away the action from it. So if you can add a bit more to your character than you're really seeing, that's just going to make it better. So I'm going to put a bit more of the light blue in here. It's a bit more sky blue. Adding more colour, more variation around the place. And I'm going to use some more swishy motion here. Try and get more colour going onto the page. All right, let's bung a bit of orange in here. I've used the word bung advisedly because actually I'm not being too fussy. I'm making sure that I get the right sort of colours, but if it spills over the line, I'm not too bothered about it. And let's have a bit of extra zhoosh going on. I don't mind that at all. Okay. And I'm actually going to put a bit of extra blue going on here too. And I'm going to bung a bit of... I'm bunging again. He's got brown legs, so let's make his feet look like they're spinning round at breaking the speed of light. So I'm drawing this shape with my, I'm trying to get a circle going on here. I can't do that if I just use my hand. I want to use my whole arm to try and get a circly shape. I'm going to put a bit of orange on there as well, just to brighten up the colour. Because when I mix this in a minute with some water, I want it to have a bit of extra colour. I'm going to put some yellow ochre. I think you've all got yellow ochre in your box. It's the sort of earthy yellow. Okay, so I'm just adding a bit of extra colour around the place. Then, don't worry, there's plenty around. I'm going to take a big brush. Now, part of the joy of the oil pastels that mix with water is that they do actually mix with water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush, and I'm going to dip it in the water. What happens if I do that? What happens if I do that? Yes, Sam?
If you then brush over it, it will spread.
Yeah, but I'm dipping my brush into my water, and then I'm pulling it out, and I'm then knocking it against the top of my water pot. What does that do?
Draining out some of the water.
Yeah, it takes away some of the water. So try not to do that. I want to put lots of water onto my page. Okay, so just take the water out. You want a sort of reasonable amount of water, because what that's going to do is when you work at the paper, you're going to end up getting some really nice blues or colours. Whatever colours you've used is going to start to come out on your work. And I'm using kind of the side of the brush like this. I'm not pushing down hard at the moment. You can't see, sorry. I'll move it over a bit. I'm going to put a bit more water on my brush so you can see it's kind of... As the brush dries out, I can use it to pick up the little filaments on the paper to give a kind of feeling that it's blurring. The speed, the motion gesture. All right, your character may be still, so you might not want to do this, but it works really, really nicely with a little bit of. I've just washed the blue off before I go to the orange. Why would I want to do that? Why do I want to wash the blue off before I go to the orange? Yeah, Imi. Yeah, it goes brown. So I'm trying to keep my orange quite punchy. Keep the hue nice and orange. And here gives me an opportunity to be expressive again. Let's move this into the shot. So I can use a bit of water on my brush, obviously. Swish it round. Oh, I like that. Little happy accident there. That's really nice. And do that kind of in general so you get this kind of feeling of motion. All right. Now, you can use the back of the brush. If you want to draw into that, you can see you can make little sgraffito marks into the surface, which are quite interesting. You can also take your darker colours again and draw into it while it's wet. It does work. It picks up the water and sort of does a little blending for you if you want to try that. Make it a bit darker under there. Okay, now I'm going to make a gesture mark with my hand now. So I want to sort of work out where it's going to go. I want to try and reinforce this line here, but also have it coming off to look like it's zooming off the page. I'm going to try and do this quickly in one motion. Okay, so we're getting that kind of feel quite nicely. Now, I picked up a straw earlier because I wanted to try and use a bit of watercolor technique, and I've been doing this with some of the younger ones. Is using watercolor with a straw, because if I make a little puddle of color here with plenty of water, so it's picked up some color. I need a bit more color in there. I'm going to use the yellow ochre, so it almost forms a bit of background color. Get it in there. And then if I pick up the straw and blow it in the direction that the Roadrunner is traveling, kind of adds a bit of dynamic movement, motion, gesture. Okay, and let's have a bit of blue going on here with it too, because it kind of looks nice. So plenty of water. I'm going to wash the orange off it in my pot. And let's get some blue going on there. Pick up the straw. Okay. So you can impart a little bit of extra zhuzh, if that's a word, quite like that word, to your work. Really express. Don't worry if you think things are wrong. I don't worry. We're trying to get happy accidents going on here. You can't do that unless you let yourself go a bit. Okay? You can't do that by doing a little drawing in the middle of your piece of paper. You've got to be big, you've got to be bold, you've got to be colourful. All right? You all look really worried. Excellent. I'm trying to push you to the edge. Okay, let's go.